So, this essay you shared about the South Sydney Rabbitohs,
Mm-hmm.
I gotta say that's a team name you don't hear every day.
Right.
And from what I've read, it seems like they're way more than just a team,
Mm.
you know?
Oh,
We're
absolutely.
talking about working class pride, resilience,
Yeah,
even resistance.
definitely.
So let's do a deep dive into how the Rabbitohs became such a symbol for
Uh,
their community.
well, it's really fascinating how their story is so intertwined with the history of Redfern and Sydney, and even the evolution of rugby itself.
Okay, so the essay starts by talking about their origins
Right.
back in 1908. Now, I know rugby league already had that blue-collar reputation
Right.
compared to rugby union,
Right.
but what was it about the Rabbitohs specifically that really cemented that connection to the working class?
Well, you can't talk about the Rabbitohs without talking about Redfern. Back then, it was a hub for laborers, factory workers, dock workers, the people who kept Sydney running.
Mhm.
And these were the people who formed the heart of the Rabbitohs, both on and off the field.
So unlike some teams that had players, from wealthier backgrounds, the Rabbitohs were built by the working class for the working classes, like right there from the start.
Absolutely. And that identity is even woven into their nickname. I have to admit, it's pretty unique. How many teams do you know called the Rabbitohs?
Okay, so let's talk about that nickname. It's not your typical mascot, is it? What's the story behind Rabbitohs?
All right, so
Okay.
picture this. Early 1900s Redfern. Working class families are doing whatever it takes to make ends meet.
Right.
And one way was to catch and sell rabbits. You'd literally have guys walking the streets calling out, "Rabbito, Rabbito."
Wow. Can you imagine that today? A team named after guys hawking rabbits on street corners.
Yeah,
But back then, it was a symbol of pride.
it was. And for the Rabbitohs players, many of whom came from these very backgrounds, it was a badge of honor. It showed where they came from, their connection to the community, their everyday struggles,
Yeah.
all of that.
Wow. It's like wearing your identity on your jersey. And speaking of identity, the essay talks about the Rabbitohs' golden era,
Yeah,
the 50s and 60s,
right.
when they won 6 premierships.
Yeah,
But even as champions, they didn't lose that underdog spirit, did they?
not at all. The Rabbitohs were never the flashy, big-budget team. They were still outspent by wealthier clubs, and a lot of their players had regular jobs on top of their rugby careers.
Wow. I bet that resonated with their working class fans. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, these guys are just like us. They clock out and then they go out there and win championships.
Exactly. They embodied that blue-collar work ethic. They were known for their toughness, their never-say-die attitude,
Yeah.
a real reflection of their community and their values.
But this whole us against the world mentality faced a new challenge in the late 90s.
Yeah.
With the, increasing commercialization of rugby league.
Yeah.
And this leads us to a pretty dark chapter for the Rabbitohs. Their expulsion from the NRL in 1999.
Yes. This was a pivotal moment. Officially, it was due to financial instability. But a lot of people saw it as a clash between the Rabbitohs' heritage and the league's shift towards a more corporate, profit-driven model.
So I'm curious, was there a sense at the time that the Rabbitohs were being targeted because of their working class roots? Like they didn't fit this new image of the sport?
Absolutely. There was definitely a feeling that the clubs with wealthy backers, the ones who could really play the money game, were favored over a club built on community and tradition like the Rabbitohs.
Right.
And this perceived injustice fueled a huge backlash.
Yeah, the essay mentions 80,000 people marching through Sydney
You're right.
to protest the expulsion. That's an incredible display of solidarity.
Hmm.
What do you think fueled that level of passion for the Rabbitohs?
Well, for these fans, it wasn't just about a rugby team. It was about defending their community, their history, their identity. The Rabbitohs were more than just a club. They were a symbol of Redfern, of working class pride, of never backing down.
Right.
And they weren't going to let that be taken away.
So they fought back with protests, legal battles, fundraising, and it ultimately led to their reinstatement in 2002. Talk about a comeback story.
It really is a testament to the power of collective action. The Rabbitohs story shows that even in the face of powerful forces, a community united can make a difference.
Yeah.
It also highlights the deep emotional connection that people can have with a sports team, especially when that team represents something larger than itself.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the power of sports
Right.
to bring people together and to stand for something bigger. But now I'm curious, how do the Rabbitohs maintain that working class identity in today's rugby league? I mean, the sport has become so much more commercialized, even globalized.
That's a great question, and I think the Rabbitohs have done a remarkable job of staying true to their roots. One key aspect is their commitment to representing the Indigenous community, which has always been a vital part of Redfern. They have a strong Indigenous presence on their team. and they're actively involved in initiatives supporting Indigenous Australians.
That's really powerful, especially considering the history of Indigenous players in rugby league. It's a continuation of that inclusivity that's been part of their identity
Yeah.
right from the beginning.
Exactly. And it's not just about symbolism. The Rabbitohs are deeply embedded in their community. They run youth programs, they support mental health initiatives, and they're constantly engaging in local projects. They haven't forgotten where they came from.
And what about their playing style? Do they still have that grit, that toughness that we talked about?
You bet. They're still known for their aggressive, physical style of play. It's a nod to their heritage, to those early Rabbitohs teams who fought for every inch on the field. And of course, you can't talk about the Rabbitohs without mentioning their fans. They are some of the most passionate and loyal in the sport, with families passing down their love for the team across generations.
So even with the backing of Russell Trowe now, who's a co-owner, the South Sydney Rabbitohs remain at their core a club for the people. It's pretty inspiring.
It is. Their story reminds us that even in a world driven by money and commercial interests, authenticity and community still matter. The Rabbitohs are a symbol of resilience, of fighting for what you believe in, and of the enduring power of shared history and identity.
This deep dive has really shown us a lot. It's more than just guys chasing a ball. It's about belonging, about fighting for your place, about carrying on a legacy.
Well said. And for anyone listening, think about this. What other symbols beyond sports unite people in a similar way? What are those things that represent a shared history, a common struggle, a sense of belonging?
That's something to ponder. Thanks for diving into this with us. It's been a fascinating look at a team that truly embodies the spirit of its community. Until next time, keep exploring.